Well, your team is ranked number 6, and you know, a lot of high expectations around the country. Where do you think you guys are at this point?
I think we need to improve dramatically at the defensive end of the floor, and we need to develop a far greater appreciation for each other's talents at the offensive end of the floor, meaning that guys need to really play good together. They got to find the right guy at the right time within our offensive schemes. And we're working on it, but we certainly have a lot of work to do.
The defensive numbers say you guys are doing really well on the defensive end. What's behind the numbers that you don't like?
I love the numbers, but we study video. And if you do something correctly 7 times and you do it poorly 3 times, you're not so much focused on the 7 times you did it correct. You're focused on the 3 things and asking yourself, why didn't we do it correctly every time? And so we showed the players video yesterday of defensive breakdowns when we did not do what we planned on doing. Things that are, if they weren't capable of doing it every time, then you'd say, hey, that's just a tough play. But these are things that we could do every single time down the floor if the guys are focused and playing correctly.
Can you give an update on just how Bruce is feeling, how things are going with him?
Bruce wants to practice and play. I mean, he doesn't want to be injured. He doesn't want to be sitting out. He asked if he could play yesterday in practice. We've told him it's up to our trainers and our doctors to make that decision, and he'll get the green light when they say so.
It might sound weird, but in some ways has this helped some of the young kids progress more? Because now they, like Lonnie, he had more on his shoulders, he had to be more of a scoring threat. Does it help some other kids in some respect?
Well, I think any time someone's role changes, so in Lonnie's case, he moved from coming in off the bench to being a starter and played really, really well. That helps his confidence, and also it earns him a lot of respect from his teammates and coaches. You scored 26 points in a college basketball game, that's saying a lot. There are a lot of guys that go through their entire career and will never score 26 points in a game.
Speaking of freshmen, can you talk about Chris Likes and what, you know, is he what
is
you
he
thought
everything
he was
I
gonna
told
be?
you?
Yes.
I'm asking you, is he everything I said?
You said he's going to be fun to watch. You guys are going to like watching him.
Yeah, Chris Likes has a dynamic game, meaning his speed, quickness, jumping ability. If he were 6'5" or 6'6", he'd be Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm. That's how dynamic he is. But he can impact the game, and it doesn't really matter the size of your height. It's really the size of your heart in terms of what you're capable of doing with your talent. And with his talent, he needs to be a nuisance on defense, and he needs to push the tempo on offense. He needs to look for his three-point shots, but he also needs to look to penetrate and pitch. He's very capable of doing all those things.
Jim, how important was it when you were recruiting Lonnie and Chris to be able to give them the opportunity to have those games, the one in Reading and now the one in D.C.?
Well, in the recruiting process, you're trying to connect with the young man and his family in some way. And normally the connections are very, very simple stuff, like us bringing the team to Reading, Pennsylvania. To others, that might be a big deal, but to us, it's just kind of business as normal. And we did that for Ryan Brown. We took our team to Savannah to play in front of his hometown friends and family. We play in New York, Kamari Murphy and Rodney Miller from New York. We're going to be playing in Boston against the Boston College. So Bruce will get a chance to play back home. So for Chris and Lonnie, it's just a statement to them and to their families that coming to the University of Miami, we're going to do everything possible to make you enjoy your career and keep your family very seriously involved.
How special was that moment in Reading, and do you kind of anticipate something like that for Chris this weekend?
Well, no, very, very different. In Washington, D.C., as good as Chris Likes is, as good as he was in high school, two-time WCAC Player of the Year, there are hundreds, literally hundreds of great players coming out of Washington, D.C. over the decades. You know, Kevin Durant is from there. Mike Beasley's from there. You can go on and on. Victor Oladipo, who just scored 47 points, he's from D.C. So Chris is in a long line of great players. In Reading, Pennsylvania, you have a handful of guys. I recruited Stu Jackson back in 1972 or 73. He played there, and Donyell Marshall played there, and you've got a handful of guys. But in Lonnie Walker's case, he is an icon. He is different than any other player that I've ever recruited and that my staff ever recruited, because in that community, he is very special. And as you get to know him, you realize why he's so special. He's got a very unique personality. He's very mature. He's very engaging. He loves meeting and greeting people, and people love him, and they really feel connected to him. He's got that animal magnetism that just people are attracted to. And the way he plays is so dynamic as well. So very, very different. When we go to Reading, there's 7,000 people cheering for Lonnie Walker. When we go to the Smith Center in Washington, D.C., there'll be the 70 to 100 Miami fans cheering for us and Chris. And the rest will be cheering for the George Washington Colonials.
With Chris, when you recruited him, did you have in the back of your mind, any reservations about his ability to get his shot off at his height?
No.
And also his possible durability, any issues there with,
No.
You knew the contact he'd be taking?
No, the answer is no. I had no reservations whatsoever. When you've played college basketball and coached college basketball as long as I have, you have a lot of experience of comparing players to other players. And the comparisons are never exact. But I had a guard, Calvin Murphy, who was 5'9". That's how many inches? 3, 5, 8 inches shorter than me. And there's no way I could guard the guy. I had a coach against Earl Boykins and Muggsy Bogues, and there was nothing we could do to stop those guys from doing what they do. And in Muggsy Bogues' case, he's 5'3". Chris towers over him.
How about also on Chris, having Shane and Angel have the success they had here? He said that was kind of a factor, that you've had shorter guards and they've had great success here.
Well, I think Chris is a big fan of college basketball, so when he was a freshman in high school, he was watching the University of Miami play and seeing Shane Larkin lead us to an ACC championship, a Sweet 16 berth, and ACC Player of the Year and a first-round draft choice. And he saw how many times we ran the pick and roll, and he liked that. So he started following us more and more, and then he watched Angel Rodriguez do it, and Angel's a little taller than him, but height is really not that big a factor when you're under 6 feet tall. Now, it becomes a factor if you're a 6'10" point guard like Ben Simmons, then your height is a huge advantage. Or like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is 7 foot and can run the point.
DeJuan Hewell.
DeJuan Hewell,
future point guard.
So those things are factors. Size becomes a factor because of how skilled you are at your size. But the key is skill. Do you have skill for your position? If you're a perimeter player, can you handle? Can you shoot the three? Can you penetrate and pitch? Can you defend another point guard? Can you rebound? All those things, just like a big guy. Can you rebound? Can you defend? Can you play with your back to the basket? I mean, can you make free throws? One of the things you see with big guys right now is there's a lot of them that don't make free throws. And it's a big key for a player, because at the end of the game, you want to be in. If you're one of your best players, you want to be in at the end of the game, and yet opponents are constantly looking to foul somebody. And Andre Drummond in the NBA, and who's the big guy for the Clippers? DeAndre Jordan, the same thing. They just foul them. And then the coach is like, do I leave him in because he's so good at one end of the floor, or do I take him out because he can't make the free throw?
Hey, Jim, big picture, you guys are ranked 6th, which this early in the season doesn't mean a lot, but do you get the sense this might be your most talented team at Miami? Not necessarily meaning wins and losses, but pure talent-wise?
I think all our teams have been talented in a certain way, so it's very, very hard to make a comparison like that during the season, because we haven't faced the level of competition that we're going to face over these next few months. If you look at our schedule now, we played Boston University. We don't come back to the Watsco Center until like January 7th. That's a month away from home. You find out a lot more about yourself on the road, not for just one game like we played Minnesota, but we've got George Washington, then Hawaii on their home court, and then 2 neutral site games, and then at Pittsburgh and at Georgia Tech. That's a lot of games in a short period of time, all away from home. So we're going to know a lot more about ourselves around the middle of January, January 15th. I think we play Clemson on the 13th and Duke on the 15th. And if that's the case, ask me this question on January 16th, and then I'll know far better, how we've done when we're facing a Marvin Bagley, when we're facing a Ben Lammers, when we have to guard a Grayson Allen. There's a big difference.
Jim, with George Washington, you mentioned obviously they'd be Temple. When they are at their best, or even in that game, what are their challenges? What do they do well when they're playing well?
Well, first of all, they're very, very good at home. And they've always been very good at home, and there should be a great crowd on hand cheering them on. Secondly, they're older guys. You have a guy like Yuta Watanabe, who's a 6'9" player, but last year he guarded Jaquan Newton because he's such a versatile defender. People have said he's one of the top 10 defenders in the country. So that's one thing, trying to score against a team who plays a 6'9" guy against your point guard. Second, they have a 4-5 man combination that are capable of scoring inside and outside, especially Arnaldo Toro, who's about 6'8", 235, 240, can shoot threes, can post up. He handles the ball very well for them. And then Steves is like a stretch 4-man who can really pass and handle and has a lot of skill. So they're somewhat similar to some of the teams we've seen, just better.
That guy, is he like the guy from Villanova, what's his name? The kind of 6'8", like 240 guy you guys had to go against?
Chris Jenkins?
Chris Jenkins, yeah. Are they comparable at all? Or no?
No. Chris Jenkins was a phenomenal shooter, probably one of the top 10 shooters in the country when he was in college. We recruited him, and I saw him play. He could play with his back to the basket, or he could play out on the perimeter and shoot threes. This guy is more of a big guy. He's 6'8", but plays in around the basket. He can make a three, but he's not gonna be launching 10 of them. No, he'll shoot 2 or 3 of them and hope to make 2 or 3.
I had a dumb question. Has Chris dunked in a game yet, or has he come close? Are you still waiting to see that? Because
I don't
seen
care.
Highlights.
A dunk gets you the same number of points as a layup. I think Chris will make a lot of layups. I don't care if he ever dunks.
Do you think fans would be excited to see that?
Well, I think fans are easily fooled by stuff like that. So to me, it makes no difference.
Okay.
I just like players to play hard and play well. And I like them to play well together, to bring out the best in each other. And when you do that, when you play for the team with the team goals in mind, and you know what your role is and you're trying to execute your role. I watched the Boston Celtics play the Chicago Bulls last night. And going into the game, the announcers were talking like, well, Chicago's not very good and Boston Celtics are playing great. And Celtics lost by 23. And I watched Chicago, they played great together. Lopez was jump hooking, and Mirotic was nailing threes, and Dunn was driving and dishing, and they looked like a terrific team. So every time you play the game, people don't play the same. You might play great and make threes like you can't miss one night, and the next night you can't make a three.
During the recruiting process, how many other coaches were coming to see Chris, or did they write him off automatically because of his size?
Well, his 5 schools were Georgetown, Virginia, Notre Dame, Villanova, and Miami. Every one of them recruited him very hard and offered him a scholarship and offered him an official visit. He elected to only make 2 official visits, to Miami first and then Villanova, I think the following weekend or shortly thereafter, and then made his decision because he said he knew he wanted to come here.
Have you ever been to Lithuania? I was wondering
no,
what you
I
thought of the Lonzo or the Ball brothers going over.
What do I
play.
think?
Yeah,
I think they'll be back before the end of the year. I've had players who've played in Lithuania. It's a phenomenal league, not the one they're playing in.
Yeah, they're like
the highest level is incredible basketball and some of the best players in the world. The league they're playing in is several steps below, and yet still knowing what coaching is like in those countries, it'll be a dramatic difference from what those young men are used to. The lifestyle will be so different than what they're used to. And my only hopes and thoughts would be their dad needs to go with them. I don't know if he will, but you can't send them over and have them live by themselves in that environment. It just would not be healthy for them.